GGG has a vision where you cast one skill, pick up an orb, cast another different skill. Well, I have my own vision. I want to press one button, clear the whole screen, and be reasonably tanky. Is that so much to ask? And I achieved just that with this setup. Welcome to my vision. Why, hello there, Exile. I started this league with Fireball and Flame Bomb combo. Well, this felt okay for a little bit when the combo lined up, terrible when it did not. I then happened to luck into a +1 amulet, got myself a +2 wand, +1 offhand, still felt kind of terrible without the combo, and what was worse, I ran out of mana on boss fights. I still don't understand GGG's obsession with downsides. Reward for getting good spellcaster gear? You can't cast shit! So then I started using the unique staff, Dust Vigil. Whenever you cast, it gives you free Ember Falseblade. And this worked out well for a little bit, but still felt a bit clunky. You see, of course, I was under the delusion that I would be able to afford a Snake Pit ring. But now that I'm a filthy casual, by the time I struggle bust my way through the campaign, it was already like 12 divines, and I had won. So around T3 maps, or Waystones, why did they rename it? No one knows. I decided I'd rather quit the game than continue to play this tedious combo crap, so I gotta look elsewhere. And the quest began to find something better. I started with Spark, but that thing hits like a wet noodle now. What a joke. Tried a bunch of other spells. What? They're so bad. They're just so bad. And that's when I started looking at the physical skills. I started looking at what other people were doing, and I found Bone Storm Bone Blast from a couple leagues ago and started trying that out. And then I stumbled upon it. Like a Christmas miracle, I realized I could just spam bonecage. It was the answer. Now GGG intended the skill to be a utility skill. You put a ring down, it has a short duration, enemies walk into it and they're pinned. But you can get it to overlap with Spell Cascade, so it shotguns, and they just up all the ratios so it does incredibly high base damage. We scale our damage really, really high, which we're a Blood Mage, so we do really big crits. Then we use Trample to combo with it, which gives overkill damage, does a little explosion. And it turns out you can scale the explosion radius with increased AoE. And if you have enough overkill, it'll trigger off of itself. Probably not intended, but we're gonna use it anyways. Now, bonecage is really nice because you put it down, and from its original use, it stays active with a duration. So it protects you in between casts. So when you don't have enough cast speed, and you get stun locked or something, one of the minions is gonna run into it and die. Also for bosses or things that you can't pin, or after they become immune to pin, you put it down and they walk through it and they get hit like 6 times, one for each overlap. If they walk through like the whole thing with the spell cascade. And it's very good for like simulacrum. It's very good. Actually, it's really funny for Abyss. You put it down on a pit and it just stays there. And as they come out of the pit, it auto triggers and just insta kills them. Great for a breach. Great for anything that's going to have monsters coming out because you just precast. And the second it spawns on you, they just die because they charge right at you. All of the explosions are coming from Trample. The boots have a 2M base explosion when you kill an enemy based on their overkill damage. Let's say a monster has 10k health, you do 400k damage, then you have an overkill of 390. You then multiply that by that 30%. Mine are corrupted, so I have a 34% more multiplier, and you get 120k pulse that'll kill, and then that'll cascade, and then you end up blowing up the whole screen. It turns out that you can scale this with generic increased area of effect, although I couldn't find anything that said that anywhere. I tested it, and the explosion radius, at least visually, is getting bigger. So I stacked this thing to 2.6M, and that's where you're seeing the entire screen blow up. It also allows you to kill rares instantly in large packs because the individual pulse is going to overlap, do a metric crap load of damage to the rare. But how do we get our damage so high? Well, it turns out the new overtuned lineage support allows bloodletting. This thing gives you 2% damage as extra physical for each life you spend. It also turns all your mana cost into life and has a 1.5 cost multiplier. Now, most supports in the game are like 25% more damage. And if you get a 30% more damage, then it always has a downside. GG Jesus loves their downsides. Something like 30% more damage, but you get kicked in the nuts when you cast a spell. So I find it absolutely hilarious that they let this thing ship. Currently, my cost is around 1,300, so that's 130 times 2, 260. More damage is physical. What? But now we have a new problem. How are we going to sustain such a high life cost? Well, it turns out they introduced this new Abyss jewels. They're like the POE1 timeless jewels. It turns the nodes into different things and the keystones in the radius into something different. The Tecrod one gives you 50% more life cost, which scales your damage due to that support, but it also gives you 1% life regen for each life you spent over 8 seconds. So if I cast a skill for 1300, I'll get to regen 1300 over 8 seconds. We can then scale life regen and cast the spell a lot to push your life regen to 3k or more. Then it gets even stupider because there's a keystone that makes it so your overflowed life regen goes to energy shield, allowing you to instantly refill both your life and your energy shield. With enough investment in regen and a high ES pool, this can make you virtually immortal. If you like this channel, you might like my other channel that I'm working on that takes place in the SCP universe. It's a bunch of lore and stories about the creatures that exist there. You can check that out in the description or the pinned comment below. Let's take a look at the skills that I'm using. So we get this life remnants from being a blood mage, and basically it adds a life cost to your skills, but it leaves little remnants on the ground that you can pick up, and it's going to give you life and it can overflow your life. We're using this harmonic remnant support, so we have a chance to get extra and we can pick it up from farther away. Then we're using this potency to get increased effect on it. And then I'm using Vitality Tool. It costs 40 spirit, but it gives us 2% of our maximum life per second. Then this is an optional setup, which is Consecrate. So on my other weapon, it gives us skill. You want a high level of it if you're going to do this. Now what it does is it puts down a zone. And while you're in it, you have Consecrated Ground. At its base, Consecrated Ground gives you 5%, if we click on here, of your life, max life regen per second, and it reduces the curse effect on you. Now, with level, it gets implicit increased effect, so we're getting almost 7.5 regen, and curses almost do nothing to us. Very good when we're running temp chains maps and feeble maps, etc. Then we have just a bunch of increased AoE on this and duration, so it actually is going to last a very long time. Something like 20-25 seconds. So in a boss room, you can just put this down one time, makes a nice little sound, or multiple times here, and then you don't really have to worry about this ever again. Early on, this is really good, especially before you get that Tecrod's combo that I was talking about, because it's free life regen. You don't got to spend spirit on. It also gives this suppressive ground, which is 30% less cooldown recovery rate, which is very good versus bosses early on. Then I'm just using bonecage. Now I'm using Spell Cascade, which means it casts 2 extra ones. That's where we're seeing that 6 overlap. See? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And an enemy can walk through all those when it becomes immune to pin. This skill base line hits our pinning. So they'll get pinned. Pin means they can't freaking move. So they run at you, run into it. If they don't die, they're pinned, and then you just keep recasting. Astral Protection. This allows me to cast it at range. Otherwise, it'll always be centered on you like this. I'm using Considerate Casting. That's because this gives me a huge less multiplier. So I'm using it to kind of balance against that. Then I have Zenith 2. This is because I'm not using mana. And because I want a generic, because on my wand, I happen to have extra damage is extra cold. That's not necessary, but I did find out that it does seem to help the performance of the game because now we're freezing and shattering monsters and there's less stuff to render on the screen. And then lastly, we have this, which is a huge chunk of our damage. Look at this, 423, take this out, 137. Yep, look at that. In fact, if we also take out the other one, which this is what changes this keystone, you need it to be Tecrod's to get that specific. Tecrod. Make sure you search that. We take both these out because the cost is lower. This is going to increase the cost. Boom, boom. Take this out with it. It's 327. Be 137. So this actually adds to it, right? 327, just having this thing adds another like 100k. So combined, they almost like 4 extra damage. Pretty nuts for just 2 little things. Then I have Blasphemy. This is just so that I have time to react, because it does have a very slow base cast speed, but that's good because it means it's going to be bigger damage. That's going to make our Trample Toe cascade. I'm just using increased area of effect and more area of effect, so it affects things as they come in. It also increases the duration of the pin that we're going to get automatically from the base skill. Now, early on, before you have enough damage to just be one-shotting things, you are going to probably want to use Bone Storm with this, so you'll use the combo of the 2. For Bone Storm, you hold it like this, and it's basically going to do up to 20 of these things, but it's going to take you a long time to channel. If you put this in, even though it makes less damage and less skill speed, it'll actually do 3 projectiles at a time. So see, look at that difference, where you don't have to hold it as long. Then you can go with this one, which is 2-second channel, which is going to give you a 40% more. You can go with like Brutality or the Considerate Casting, but this is going to make you have to hold it longer. So probably Brutality in here. Now, you might notice that I don't have any armor break, and that is because I'm using this Cut to Bone on my amulet, which is going to make my crit hits break the armor. Break armor, what that does is it lowers their armor until they run out of armor, and then it makes them take more, well, increased physical damage from hits, which is basically a more multiplier. That's additive with like a shock. So very good. This is an expensive enchant. You're going to want to just pick up these 3 nodes early on, and then you could drop any support. Otherwise, super early on, when you can't get this node right here, this 5%, which is more than enough to break any armor on anything. But early on, you could use armor break 3, which will be 20% break. Now, this is intended to be super easy because all you're doing is casting this one skill. This is all you have to do. This is your gameplay. That's it. You just keep casting. Boom. That's it. Very chill style. And then remember, I told you what's going to happen with the regen. Let's look at that. So I'm going to put down this and look at our regen. And then we're just going to keep casting. Casting and casting and casting. Refresh that. Cast, cast, cast. Look at my regen. It's going up. So we're like 340 right now with this current setup. We can get more on the tree. And then, as I talked about, it's going to overflow into our energy shield. So we're getting this entire life plus energy shield back in about 2 seconds. So if we're not getting one shot, we're pretty much going to just regen our full life. I'll eventually invest into more life regen, like there's a 25% here. If I move this somewhere else, these nodes right here, you need Arcane Surge, and then these turn your Arcane Surge into affecting and being a more life regeneration rate instead of mana. Okay, Ascendancy. So this node is very, very strong. It's basically a super expensive flask in POE1, but you just get it baseline. You still take damage, but it's over 4 seconds. So basically increases the amount of damage you could take for the one-shots. This allows you to get a ton of life from your chest piece. Otherwise, you got to go with the Comb's Heart, and then you don't have any spirit. Now, I went with a chest piece that had energy shield that's decently high with life, because I found these to be much cheaper than ones that were completely energy shield. But you can go with just full-on energy shield, like 1100 energy shield. I went down to here because these are actual life regen nodes here, these 3. There just isn't a lot of life regen on the tree. There's this here. There's these nodes that lead to that Arcane Surge. And then everything else just about is in this section down here. If we look at regen, you could get one of the jewels that allows you to allocate everything in the radius of a keystone and pick up these for a crap load of regen, which I thought about doing. Now, I managed to snipe this for pretty cheap, which gives me 17 life regen, which is actually about 2 nodes worth of life regen. When you're trying to figure out what to do with your build, try to think about things in terms of base nodes of what you can get. In general, other things are going to be better than what you can't stack in the tree. So a good instance of this is crit multi. Crit multi is very, very easy to get on the tree. However, flat damage, not so much. So you want to prioritize flat damage over like crit multi. But ideally, for a build like this, our goal with the Blood Mage is really to get our crit to 100%. Then we're getting everything out of our crit multi and everything out of our increased damage, and that multiplies together. At my current rate, I'm sitting around plus 600% crit multi, and I have about plus 500 increased damage, or 400. So you add 100 to that. So that's like a 7 times multiplier, and you're multiplying that by 6. And that's just going to outscale everything, especially when other more multipliers that come from like support gems are like 25, 30%. That's why crit is so darn strong in these video games. Now, you might have noticed I didn't actually pick up this for the 15% base crit. Well, it turns out, for some reason, they decided that these bone skills should just have 15% base crit. So this node doesn't really do anything for us. This node currently is bugged in the game and does absolutely nothing. So I just picked up this, which gives us bleed and aggravated bleed. Aggravated means it treats them like as if they're moving. Bleed does bonus damage when they're moving. That's why when there's a bleed on you and you continue to move, you take a crap load of damage. Then this is just spell damage, leeches life. However, we don't really need that. If this node wasn't bugged, I probably would spend all 4 points to go ahead and get this just for some more multi. Plus there's this crit hit chance for spells. That's 24%. Look at how expensive on the tree crit hit chance for spells is. There's only 10 base, whereas a crit multi node is 15. So you want to make sure that you're getting tons of crit hit chance. 12 is actually pretty good. Now, everything else around this build, the nodes that I chose to pick up, were basically around crit hit chance and crit hit damage to push that to 100% crit. So like this is 20% crit hit chance. I grab these are crit, and then I'm just getting like energy shield nodes here. This is crit hit chance, crit hit damage. This is crit hit chance and crit hit damage. This is crit hit chance and crit hit damage. Crit hit chance, crit hit damage, crit hit chance, crit hit damage. You get the point, okay? That's the main thing that we're stacking. And then we're getting the flat damage from our wand and our offhand, which I need to really replace this offhand. And I probably can replace this as well. I don't need all that extra because of the jewel. Now, before you have the Tecrods, you're going to probably have life and mana issues. To solve that, you're probably going to want to go with these nodes over here. These are going to convert your mana cost into life. You can convert half of it with these 3 nodes. Very, very strong. You probably don't want to pick this up until much later because it increases the life cost and you're going to have problems. There's also these nodes that are pretty good. That allows the remnants to be picked up further away. And you can recover mana when you collect a remnant. Or you could recover even more life when you collect a remnant. And our base thing here is a remnant. If you're still having trouble with mana, for 1 point here, you can pick up mana on kill, or you can get that in a jewel. Now I'm running 4% life gained on kill on my jewels. So 2% on this one and 2% on that one. And that's because until you get ramped up on your health, look at my health go down. See, it's like not fully refilling. So I want to be able to just go in and be super cozy in the map where, oh, I didn't put the Tecrods in, by the way, for this. So now it's coming back quicker as I'm going. Wait, did I take the other jewel out? No. Okay. I'm running into a thing where until I get spamming, I got to hit my life flask here to get it going. So I'd want to go into a pack, cast once, it tops me off, and then I can ramp much smoother. That's going on. And then if I take a ton of damage and they happen to run into the spikes while I'm stun locked, I'm probably going to kill that monster or cascade kill the monsters and recover my life. And it'll help me live when I shouldn't have actually lived. Now, you don't necessarily have to go up here and grab this. You don't even have to go, I mean, really you want this node once you have your regen. You're going to want this place, but you could put this right here, over here, and drop all this and go with different nodes. All right, let's look at the gear. So I'm basically stacking life, energy shield, making sure I'm capped on res, and I'm trying to get rarity into my build. So I got 23 on my gloves. Other than that, we're looking for just the life, energy shield, and resist. For this, we basically want 5% fizz skills. A lot of people aren't playing fizz skills, so you can get +5 pretty darn cheap, actually. Then you want cast speed, because it's a very slow base cast. And then because we're running considerate casting, our cast speed's even slower. We definitely want crit hit chance, because like I said, it's 10% per node. So we want to make sure that we're getting, especially when we're stacking the multi, to 100%. Then you want some sort of extra spell damage, and spell damage is physical. Those are what you're looking for in your prefixes. For ring, this one was just to help me cap my resistances, and then I wanted a little bit of rarity on it. I unfortunately rolled and got lightning damage. I really would like life on this. I need to replace this. This is probably my weakest piece of gear right now. For my helm, I went with 2... For my helm, this has energy shield, max life, rarity, crit hit chance, and then a resist. It happened to have chaos res. And I got one that was corrupted with 2 sockets so that I could put 8% for increased area of effect. You don't necessarily have to do that. That's just what I did. Now, early on, I highly recommend that you prioritize getting a ton of rarity on your helm. You can get both a prefix and a suffix, getting you like 40% rarity on a single piece. 40% rarity is very, very noticeable. I'd prioritize that quite heavily, especially if you're pretty broke. Just go with a life roll. Don't you worry about the energy shield roll, and then try to get 40% rarity on it. Now, I went with crit hit chance because, once again, that's a very hard stat to get, and I don't want to be spending points on the tree picking up a lot of crit hit chance. Then for my amulet, I went with plus spells, crit hit chance again, and then some form of life. Everything else is kind of bonus. You can get some resists on it. So crit hit chance here, crit hit chance here. Then I went with this ring, and the main thing I was looking for here on this ring is more crit hit chance than crit damage bonus, because much harder stat to get. For my chest piece, I went with max life, and then high energy shield, and then preferably at least 1 resist on it. More resists, the better, because then you don't have to spend jewels trying to cap res, which right now I'm currently having to spend multiple. Then for a belt, we want a ton of resist. This is one of my most expensive pieces of gear. Honestly, getting tri-res on a belt, very, very expensive. Then Trample toe, you can just get one with a socket. Doesn't have to be corrupted. I was able to pick this up for a little bit more expensive than just the regular one. I think like 25x. So that's why I went with one that had more overkill. Then with offhand, you're wanting plus all spells, crit hit chance and cast speed, and then ideally spell fizz and spell damage. This is pretty cheap because people don't care about the spell physical damage, and it's pretty hard or pretty easy to make this. And the expensive part comes if you're trying to get a high energy shield. on it, which is what I'm probably going to do soon. So I'm going to buy and replace this because I can get much higher rolls for spell damage and spell physical damage, which is a stat that I'm sorely lacking. Okay, to recap, we're getting overkill damage, which is chain cascading from our boots. We're using this unending hate timeless jewel for our recovery in combination with this. We are using Atulo's bloodletting and only bonecage. This is where a lot of our damage is coming from. We're stacking crit hit chance to try to get as close to 100% crit as possible. Scaling crit multi, getting a little bit of energy shield, get life regen on the tree, and make sure you have some form of armor break. You can get that cheap for 3 points here, or you can anoint something super expensive like I did here. Best of luck in this league, and I'll see you guys in the next one.